Why life falling apart might be the best thing for you. Why is it that when life falls apart, we feel like we are losing everything? Why does suffering feel like destruction instead of transformation? What if I told you that the worst moments of your life, the pain, the failures, the heartbreaks, are not the end of something, but the beginning? We spend our entire lives building. We construct identities, careers, relationships, and routines, believing that they will last. We attach ourselves to these things as if they define who we are. But what happens when everything starts to crumble? What happens when the job you relied on disappears? When the person you loved walks away? When everything you thought was stable suddenly collapses, leaving you standing in the wreckage? Most people panic. Most people resist. We cling harder, trying to hold on to what is already slipping through our fingers. But this is where suffering intensifies, not in the loss itself, but in our refusal to let go. Buddhism teaches us that attachment is the root of suffering, not because love, success, or comfort are bad things, but because we mistake them for permanent things. We believe that if we can just hold on tightly enough, we can make life predictable, controllable, safe. But life is none of these things. Life is impermanent. Everything you have will one day be gone: your possessions, your relationships, even your own body. And yet, instead of accepting this truth and flowing with it, we fight against it. We try to force stability in a world that is constantly shifting. And when it inevitably shifts, we suffer. But here's the paradox. What if the moments when life is falling apart are actually the moments when you are finally seeing reality clearly? What if everything breaking down is not a punishment, but an invitation? An invitation to let go, to release the illusions you have been clinging to, but to stop resisting the natural flow of life and instead surrender to it. What if the pain you are feeling is not the end of something, but the space being created for something new? Think about this. When a forest burns, it looks like devastation. The towering trees collapse into ash. The landscape is reduced to ruin. But beneath the surface, something incredible is happening. The fire clears the way for new life. It releases nutrients into the soil, making it richer, more fertile. Seeds that have lain dormant for years finally have the space to grow. Without destruction, there is no renewal. Without loss, there is no rebirth. And the same is true for you. The parts of your life that are crumbling right now, the things that feel like they are being ripped away, what if they were never meant to stay? What if they were only ever temporary, and their time has simply come to an end? What if the pain you are experiencing is not life being cruel, but life showing you where you were holding on too tightly?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So ask yourself, what are you clinging to right now that is already gone? What part of your identity, your relationships, your dreams are you refusing to release, even though they are no longer serving you? And what if, instead of resisting, you simply let go? What if, instead of seeing this moment as the end, you saw it as the beginning of something you cannot yet understand? Because here's the truth Buddhism teaches us: suffering is not in the loss itself. Suffering is in the attachment. The tighter you hold on to something, the more it hurts when it slips away. But if you can learn to release, to surrender, to trust that even in destruction there is wisdom, then suddenly life becomes lighter. Change becomes less terrifying. And you begin to realize that nothing was ever truly yours to begin with. Everything was only ever borrowed, meant to be experienced, then released. This is not an easy lesson. It is not something you hear once and suddenly feel better. It is something you must practice over and over every time life shakes you to your core. But imagine just for a moment what it would feel like to stop resisting, to stop fearing the unknown, to trust that even when life looks like it is falling apart, it is actually setting you free. The liberation of letting go. Why losing everything can set you free. We spend our whole lives trying to build something solid, something we can rely on, something that will last. But what if the very act of trying to hold on to life is what keeps us trapped? What if the freedom we are searching for has been hidden beneath everything we have been afraid to lose? Think about how much of your suffering comes not from what happens to you, but from your resistance to it. When you lose a job, the pain is not just the loss of income, it is the loss of identity, the fear of uncertainty, the belief that your worth was tied to that title. When a relationship ends, the grief is not just about the absence of another person, it is about the future you imagined, the version of yourself that existed within that love, but the fear of being alone. Loss does not hurt because of what is taken from us. It hurts because of how tightly we were holding on. Buddhism teaches that everything is impermanent, but not just the things we dislike, but the things we love. Not just the moments of suffering, but the moments of joy. And yet we live as if this is not true. We tell ourselves that if we can just find the right person, the right career, the right set of circumstances, we will finally be safe. But what happens when life reminds us again and again that nothing stays the same? If we have built our happiness on the illusion of permanence, then every change will feel like a betrayal. But if we accept impermanence, if we embrace it, then loss is no longer something to fear. It is only a transition, a shift from one version of ourselves to another. Imagine what would happen if you stopped resisting change. If instead of mourning what is leaving, you trusted that its departure was making space for something new. Imagine what would happen if you stopped trying to control life and instead allowed it to unfold as it was meant to. What if, instead of fearing loss, you saw it as an invitation to grow, to evolve, to become something greater? There is a famous Buddhist story about a man clinging to a branch over a cliff. Below him is the void. Above him, no one is coming to save him. He is terrified, gripping the branch with all his strength, desperate to hold on. But the branch is breaking. No matter how hard he tries, he cannot stop it from snapping. And then, in his final moment of desperation, he hears a voice inside him whisper, "Let go." And when he does, expecting to fall into nothingness, he realizes that the ground was only a few feet below him the whole time. The thing he feared the most falling was the very thing that would set him free. But how often do we do this in our own lives? How often do we cling to things that are already slipping away, believing that if we hold on just a little longer, we can stop the inevitable? How often do we exhaust ourselves resisting what is already happening instead of surrendering to it? And how much unnecessary suffering do we create by refusing to trust that even in loss, there is wisdom? The truth is, every time something is taken from us, we are given an opportunity. We are given the chance to see who we are without the things we thought defined us, and to rebuild ourselves, not from a place of fear, but from a place of clarity. To stop living according to the expectations we once had and instead ask, what now? Who am I now that everything has changed? Because here is the secret. Losing everything does not mean you are broken. It means you are being stripped down to the core of who you really are. It means you are being given the rarest of gifts, the chance to start again, without the weight of the past holding you down. But only if you are willing to let go. Only if you are willing to trust that when life takes something away, it is not punishing you, it is setting you free. So ask yourself, what are you still gripping onto, even though you know it is already gone? What would happen if you loosened your grip, if you stopped fighting, if you finally let go? Would you fall? Or would you realize that you were never in danger at all? Finding yourself in the ashes, how destruction reveals who you really are. There comes a moment, after everything has fallen apart, when you stand in the silence of what remains. No more illusions, no more distractions, no more pretending that life is something it is not. But just you, stripped down to the core of your existence, staring at the ruins of what you once believed was unshakable. And in that moment, something terrifying happens. You realize that without everything you once held onto, you do not know who you are. For most of our lives, we define ourselves by external things. Our relationships, our careers, our achievements, even our struggles. We say, I am a doctor, or I am a mother, or I am someone who has been hurt. These labels become our identity, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. But what happens when those things are taken away? When the job disappears, when the relationship ends, when the version of yourself you spent years building no longer exists, most people panic, because without those things they feel like nothing. But what if this is the greatest gift life could ever give you? What if losing everything is the only way to finally see yourself clearly? Buddhism teaches that the self we cling to is an illusion, that the version of ourselves we spend years constructing is not who we truly are, but a temporary collection of thoughts, emotions, and experiences. The problem is, we believe this false self is real. We invest in it, we defend it, we shape our entire lives around maintaining it. And so when life takes it away, when the things that once defined us crumble, we feel like we are dying. But we are not. We are simply being forced to confront the truth, that who we are is not something that can be lost. Imagine a fire burning through a forest. At first, all you can see is devastation. The trees that once stood tall are reduced to ash. The landscape is unrecognizable. But if you look closer, you will see something incredible beneath the destruction. New life is beginning. Seeds that could never have sprouted before now have space to grow. The forest is not dead. It is simply transforming. And so are you. The parts of you that are being burned away, the identities, the attachments, the illusions were never meant to last. They were temporary, just like everything else in life. And now, in their absence, you have the chance to discover something deeper, something real, something that was always there, hidden beneath everything you thought you needed to be. But this is where most people turn back. Because standing in the ashes of your former self is uncomfortable. It is raw. It is uncertain. We are so used to defining ourselves by external things that when they are gone, we feel lost. But what if the point was never to define yourself at all? What if the point was to realize that you do not have to be anyone in particular? That you do not have to fit into a label, a role, a story? What if you could simply exist, moment by moment, without clinging to an identity that was never truly yours? This is what freedom really looks like. Not the freedom to have everything you want, but the freedom to let go of everything you thought you needed. And the freedom to exist without attachment, without fear, without the constant pressure to be something specific. When life takes everything away, it is not punishing you. It is offering you a chance to wake up, to stop living in the illusion of permanence and finally see reality as it is: fluid, ever-changing, and full of endless possibilities. So ask yourself, who are you when there is nothing left to define you? What remains when everything else is gone? And what if, instead of trying to rebuild the old version of yourself, you allowed something entirely new to emerge? Because maybe, just maybe, everything falling apart was never an ending. Maybe it was the beginning of the truest version of yourself you have ever known. The art of becoming, how to rebuild yourself without fear when everything falls apart. The instinct is to rebuild as quickly as possible, and to grab the broken pieces and force them back into place, to restore what was lost, to return to some version of normal. But what if normal was the problem? What if the life that collapsed was never truly meant for you? What if, instead of rushing to reconstruct the past, you allowed yourself to step into something entirely new? Buddhism teaches that clinging to the past is one of the greatest causes of suffering. Not because the past was bad, but because it no longer exists. And yet, this is what most of us do. We try to recreate what is already gone, rather than allowing life to move forward. But here's the truth. You are not the same person you were before everything fell apart. You have been changed by your suffering, reshaped by your losses, transformed by the fire of destruction. And so the life you build next cannot, and should not, be the same as the one you lost. But rebuilding yourself without fear requires something rare. It requires trust. Trust that you do not need to have all the answers right now. Trust that uncertainty is not something to fear, but something to embrace. Trust that the emptiness you feel is not a void, but a space, an open, limitless space where something new can grow. And this is where most people struggle. They mistake emptiness for failure. They mistake the unknown for danger. And so they rush to fill the silence, afraid of what might happen if they simply sat with it for a while. But what if, instead of forcing the next chapter, you gave yourself permission to wait, to listen, to allow life to unfold at its own pace, without trying to control it? Imagine a sculptor standing before a block of marble. She does not rush in with frantic energy, hacking away at the stone without thought. She observes, she studies, she listens to the shape hidden within, waiting for it to reveal itself. And only then does she begin to carve, not with force, but with care, removing everything that is not essential. This is how you must approach the process of rebuilding yourself. Not by rushing, not by forcing, but by listening. By removing what no longer serves you. By trusting that the person you are becoming is already within you, waiting to be uncovered. And this is where the real beauty of destruction is revealed, because when life takes everything away, it also gives you a rare and precious gift, the chance to start again with intention. To ask yourself, what do I truly want? And who do I truly want to be? To build not out of fear, not out of desperation, but out of clarity, out of wisdom. Out of a deep understanding that nothing lasts forever, and so the only thing that matters is how fully you live each fleeting moment. So ask yourself, will you spend your life trying to rebuild what is already gone? Or will you allow yourself to step into the unknown, into the new, into the endless possibility of who you might become? Because maybe, just maybe, losing everything was never about destruction. Maybe it was about revealing the truth that you were never meant to stay the same. That you were always meant to grow, to evolve, to become something greater. And that sometimes the only way to do that is to let everything fall apart. And then, with open hands and an open heart, begin again.